Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. So, good afternoon to everybody. I'm gonna be uploading this to my YouTube channel as well. So I am Diego Wancha, aka Matsec. I'm a security consultant at a company named Intelligy. I'm 23 years old. I hold some certifications, CRTE, ADC, SCESP, which is a new one from Altered Security, CRTP, ECPPT, EGPT, and I'm planning on taking OSCP soon. I'm a cat lover, so that's pretty much everything you need to know for this presentation. This is an overview of the presentation. We're going to be talking about why, um, what's Red Team OPSEC, which is an acronym, and what are its 12 steps, which you can see here. Okay, so why? Uh, we all know there are already some methodologies for network and web penetration testing. We may have heard of BDES, BTF, OSSTMM, even OWASP. But what about physical red teaming or physical pen testing, if you want to name it like that? Well, technically, nowadays we found out that TTPs are vague. Execution can often be sloppy. Objectives may be misaligned, and results are inconsistent. So here is this red team OPSEC methodology, which was created by Jeremiah Talamantes, which according to its own LinkedIn, he's a 20 years CSP veteran, founder of Compliant.io, Mitigated.io, etc., etc. He actually owned a company uh, mainly focused on physical red team operations. Okay, so this was developed in response to a lack of a real and relevant framework on physical red teaming, and is obviously heavily influenced on American military strategies. The reason I um, say this is because I'm from Colombia, and I don't know if there are other peoples from other countries other than the United States. So that should be taken into account. Now, this is meant to be a consistent, repeatable, and comprehensive step-by-step guide for physical red team operations. By no means I intend on coming across to you guys like a some some sort of expert. I'm just a guy who read a book and thought it might be cool to share some knowledge, which I love. Okay, so uh, the first step of a physical red team operations should always be the rules of engagement. Here it's important to mention something. Some people think that one of the differences or the main differences between pen testing and red teaming is that the latter lacks this part, rules of engagement, just because we can hack into everything just as a threat actor. This is not quite right, as we still need to, well, make some uh, document that allows the entire operation at a high level with the client, right? In here, we define which TTPs are fair game and which are not. For example, in our red team operations, we might need to break a window, but the client might not be okay with that, right? So it's better, obviously, we discuss this uh, before actually doing it with the client. And this is actually based on two things. First off, the likelihood, and this encompasses sophistication and realism. Breaking a window may not be that sophisticated and may be realistic in certain scenarios, right? And on the other hand, the impact in terms of monetary and business value, actually a window may not cost a lot to a company. However, breaking, I don't know, a candy machine just as a means of distraction for a specific action or goal you intend to accomplish throughout your red team engagement can be, right? So those are things you want to take into account when creating these rules of engagement document, which is created by the red team lead uh, most of the time. Now, comments are so funny. Okay, so the second step would be to engage in reconnaissance. I'm gonna be just reading this paragraph, which is extracted from a army book or something. It says reconnaissance is a mission to obtain information by visual observation or other detection methods about the activities and resources of an enemy or potential enemy, or about the meteorological, hydrographic, or geographic characteristics of a particular area. So, just as we conduct reconnaissance for a company in terms of digital presence, we always seek out for subdomains, um, public facing IPs, cloud buckets, or I don't know, social media profiles, all that stuff. We must do it as well in a physical red team operations. Now, when doing this, we should consider that every team should be made up of two or more operators and at least one red team leader. Now, what are the objectives of a red team leader? So this person must know the mission at hand completely and thoroughly. Usually the RTL is not on ground, he's rather remotely giving orders, so uh, he just oversees the whole mission. He serves as a primary communicator with the client and we team operator, right? He must certify the team readiness. That is, if we are not ready and we make a mistake, well, that's very much the fault of the RTL. So he's also responsible for the actions of the operators. He commands them in the field and determines the mission success. So the communication here is super important, and we need to break it down. So for on one hand, we have the client communication. This is pretty much uh, a list of contacts that must be available by phone in the case something important is discovered. This is also known as a get out of jail free card, right? Or authorization letter. So even in the reconnaissance or the intrusion itself, if you get caught or if you get caught either with the security team or the law enforcement, you should use this resource to get out of jail for free. Right. So, in terms of inner team communications, it's important that we use a repository. Google Drive will do just fine, and we should hold meetings to share information internally for everything we find. So this is in strategy ideas, TTP plannings, time and resource planning, reconnaissance findings. Even if a finding doesn't look like an important one, it should be shared with the team because another fellow operator that has more experience or well maybe it's a little bit more creative could find a way to exploit that in a successful manner. So everything should be shared uh, effectively. Now, in the book, uh, Jeremiah show us three methods I just brought up. Two, to engage in reconnaissance. So the first method is the C3 method, right? So the first one is of the C3 method is contact. This is pretty much just watching movement, engaging in casual conversations with employees, something that will not draw too much attention towards what you're doing, but it will allow you to gather important information about the environment, right? Um, the next one is conceal, which means blending in without drawing attention. For example, in these pictures, you see a guy using a balaclava or a mask. This could be useful in remote locations. I know you guys in the US have a lot of companies that have facilities like in the middle of the desert or something like that. This could be useful, maybe not so much in Latin America, but that is a resource. Now, the second picture, I don't know what the name is, but it's to evade temperature security controls. Uh, so it could be useful as well. However, look at that. The third picture is just a simple guy using a shirt, um, uh, glasses, pants, pretty much a white collar worker. So that is pretty much what you would need to blend in a urban environment, right? In an office. Now the third one is capture. And capture just is capture information to analyze and make predictions for vulnerabilities. Here we can use several tools such as high definition cameras, spy watches, uh, spy pans, like those that you're seeing, spy glasses, and this is actually me preparing for an engagement. And Well, the glasses are not that beautiful, but they work just fine. So these artifacts are really important when it comes to conducting a successful reconnaissance phase. Now there's another method which is a little bit more complete, which is EDECE. So the first E stands for establish rally point. We must define a physical location the team will go once the mission is completed or aborted. We'll see more of this later. The D stands for deploy team, so operators are deployed after all necessary checks. Then we engage the target, that is, we move towards the target. Here is where discrete cameras comes into play. With those, we capture intelligence, that is, we complete the recon goals. What can be recon goals? Well, we may have to capture images of the cameras, the entrance logs, the lobby activities and the personnel, the employee badges, etc. And finally, we just exit to the rally point. And this is only dictated by the red team leader exfiltration procedures. For example, if there are, let's say, 3 or 4 guys doing this reconnaissance mission, they will just not start walking away at the same time. That could raise suspicions from somebody, right? So there must be a specific exfiltration procedure uh, to avoid attention. Now, with this done, we move towards the third phase, which is direct preparations. Basically, here, uh, the whole team analyzes all the intelligence gathered and align the action steps to follow in support of the rules of engagement, right? So every artifact that is photo, video, should be reviewed by the whole team, as I said before, and we conduct a vulnerability analysis about those. So we ask ourselves 2 questions. So does the team believe there is a vulnerability present? And if so, is there a security control in place to defend against the exploitation of this vulnerability? How sophisticated is it, right? Um, we also should start thinking about additional needs and resource planning. For example, if we need more tools, for example, well, if we see a door that is just that can be opened through RFID badges, we may need to get some, well, this device that clones them, right? That clones the badges. I don't know the name, honestly. And maybe we may need more team members. So this is the moment where we start planning all this for future tasks. So in the fourth phase, we do this trigger mobilization. Basically, we define, this is just a intellectual task. We define when it is the right time to move out, what time of day makes the best time to infiltrate a facility, and do they roll out all together? So basically, we establish the movement of operators to the target in a controlled fashion, so we don't compromise the mission with our presence. Um, for example, I've only done urban infiltrations, that is in offices in the middle of the city, right? So for example, it's not the same to infiltrate a facility at 9 or 10 a.m. where no one's around, basically, rather than doing it at, I don't know, 12 p.m. or 1 p.m. where everybody's going back after lunch, so we can pretty much tailgate uh, with them, right, and start crossing doors with the help of them. That would help us a lot. That would be better. So in this map, I just created an example where we are planning on infiltrating the Bank of America corporate center. I don't know if how hard that would be. Honestly, I just googled up banks from the U.S. So take a look at this. So the staging site is a site chosen for its close proximity to a target. So if you take a look at that, it's like 2 or 3 streets away from the bank. So we can pretty much park our car over there or look at a comfy spot where we can just, well, talk a little bit, uh, 5 minutes before actually going to the bank, right? And we can dress up and stuff. Now, the deployment point could be the same or could be maybe 1 street uh, away from that staging area. but it's the exact point where we just decide, okay, let's start walking towards the bank, pretty much. And the rally point, um, as you can see, is a point where the team will assemble outside the facility to exit the location. That's the point where probably the red team lead will be parked with a van, waiting for the operators to come to him right after the mission is completed. So now we execute this staging phase, right? So as I said, this is more like an intellectual phase. We just think of these concepts, but here we execute it. So let's say we're in the staging area. We're inside our van, right? So the red team lead needs to certify the team's readiness. So he must confirm all the operators know the roles of engagement goals. They are well suited up. Um, we all should test the equipment, make sure it's working just fine, check the communications. Let's say we are in a Google meeting. Um, Google Meets, is it Meet? Meets meeting, I don't know. And we all have like a good internet connection and we just deploy after that, right? After all those checks. So let's say you actually start walking towards the Bank of America and you reach the front door. Now think you start thinking about, hey, is there a new security camera? Is it busier than normal maybe? Are those three guards new? So here you must decide what the team will do based on unexpected changes in the environment, right? This can happen all the time. So we have three options here. We either abort, we say, okay, no, these three guards are really gonna, uh, I don't know, stop me from even entering the building. It's impossible. Okay, so you abort, you advance as planned. You say, okay, there's a new camera, but I mean, what the hell? That camera won't stop me, right? You advance as planned, nothing changed, or you acclimate and advance. That is, you enter with confidence, right? So, okay, there are three guards. Yes, they're new, but it's okay. I'm gonna acclimate. I'm gonna just do what I was gonna do anyway, and with confidence. So I go in. Now, when you go in, you need to start maneuvering operations, right? That is, you need to move swiftly, securely, and confidently to and around the target. Um, Here you must like have a lot of situational awareness. That is, you have to be perceptive and understand the relevant information uh, in the environment, so you can make effective decisions, right? So here you're inside. Okay, so you should tune out distractions. You should shun complacency. You must not think that just because you're inside, um, everything will go in your favor, because at any minute something or someone could stop you from doing what you're doing, right? So here you need to be prepared to be caught off guard. You have to have a strong pretext or the backstory for why you're there and what you're doing, right? And you must continually evaluate, um, well, what you're doing and where you're going, right? So here is an important concept that helps us with this, which is a OODA loop, which is a concept that was created by some American military guy. I don't remember, maybe in the 1700s. And it's OODA for observe, orient, decide, and act. This is um, a concept that was thought for helping soldiers in the front line to make effective decisions while under gunfire, right? So we must be observing at all times, taking the environment and its dimensions, right? So we must be aware of the sights, the sounds, the smells, either spatially or situationally, contextually, and emotionally, right? So, for example, um, if you're if you sat down in a couch and you're super relaxed, but you start noticing that another person is looking at you in a strange manner, Okay, that's a fact, right? That person is looking at you. Now, let's orient that. Let's transform that raw data into information. What it does tell me. So the person looks at me strange. It could be either because I have mucus in my nose, or because he effectively thinks I'm not supposed to be there, right? So based on that, we need to decide and act. What are we gonna do? This is more like a gut reaction, actually. Here we decide the optimal course of action to mitigate the situation. Okay, if this guy is looking at me strangely, I prefer on standing up and walking away as naturally as I can. Probably if there is a coffee machine, make one up and then leave the room, right? Now there's another concept important, which is cover and concealment and movement. So cover and concealment means blending in and tool discipline to avoid grabbing the security personnel attention. So basically tool discipline, um, well, let's say if you're in a remote location, you shouldn't be using your flashlight if it's at night, obviously. You shouldn't be using it slightly, cause someone far away could spot you, right? Same way, if you're um, in the middle of an office, you shouldn't be taking out your Wi-Fi antenna to scan for Wi-Fi networks, right? You shouldn't be taking out your laptop and opening up Kali Linux as well, obviously. So that's tool discipline. Now, blending in means more, also is more than just the way you're dressed up. It means if you're in an office, you should behave yourself like everybody does. You don't want to raise suspicious by doing something everybody else wouldn't do in that situation. And the movement is just more than moving bodies from one position to another. This can be, uh, this must be done super carefully. And for example, here we have some hand signals that the law enforcement use. And obviously, if this is done in a remote location, some of these can be uh, employed, right? But in an office, I mean, you wouldn't be raising your arm and like this, right? It would be awkward. It would be weird. Uh, but yeah, you can create your own hand signals with your team. Somehow they would understand you when you need to communicate something without using your voice. Okay. So now here it comes the offensive strike, which is the phase where the hypothetical becomes reality. Okay. So this is where suspected vulnerabilities are either found to be exploitable or not. So for example, here we see we have a hypothetical thing, which is okay, in an office, some person should be kind enough to let us walk uh, walk through a door if we just ask them nicely, right? So we need to test this and, well, ask them, hey, can you let me pass that door, for example, right? Or, well, the use of an RFID uh, cloned badge. So now the nine is penetrating control, uh, and this is pretty much like the post exploitation phase in the pen testing process, right? So this is where we plan on getting persistence in a system, right? So we start asking ourselves, how do I go unnoticed? Where am I, and which way should I go? And more importantly, what happens if someone sees me, right? So uh, here is something important about the character change. It's because you may need to change your clothes, right? For example, if you're penetrating into a remote location, you may want to dress dress up yourself like a maintenance crew or the cleaning crew, um, and then after you're in, uh, you may want to change back to a white collar worker, right? Just to keep your movement towards the goal, which may be reaching the server's room, for example. Now your personality should change as well. For example, uh, when you're at the front desk trying to uh, enter the building, the facility, you may want to come across to the security personnel as a very charming person, really cool guy, right? But once inside, you could be a I don't know, a furious supervisor or someone needing a document like right away and talking on the phone, so you don't have time for anybody. So that would give you the authority for someone to comply with your orders towards getting something you want, either a document, a hard drive, access to a room, wherever it is. So we need to establish our position, and operational orders is this thing up ord. Operational orders almost always will require operators to reach certain destinations and perform specific tasks once inside. That's what I said. For example, an operational order would be to reach the server's room, but also it could be to just get a flag, which would be a hard drive, or get a laptop out of the building, or or a document with confidential information. Now, this evacuation plan will help us a lot to establish our position, know where we are, and where should we move towards, right? So this is pretty much present in every building just for security reasons and by law, I think. Otherwise, we could also ask the people around. Um, in certain context, probably if a company has like 10 offices around a city, maybe you're just a visitant and you don't know where certain room is. So why not ask around? Now, here's the 10th. Um, we're in the secure operational order phase. And here's where we complete the intended actions on the objectives. So we have some recon results and mission goals, right? And we plan on well, accomplishing them. So, for example, in this picture, this is from an actual engagement. I I was like in the 10th floor or something, and if you can see here, like in the platform that elevates the laptop, I don't know what the name is. There was a document with the name of all the people in that aisle, and right next to it there was like a username, right? So we had that those usernames. There were like 20 of them, and right in front of that desk, in above that computer, there was another document, and we have a post-it note with a password. You can see here it says clave, which means password in Spanish, of course. So we used Trevor Spray once we were out. Um, we just passed it all those on-site user names, right, with the password and the URL, and we found it. So success, we could authenticate uh, to that service, obviously. And this is a big shout out to Gonski because he showed me this tool. um, Obviously, we couldn't get into that account because of MFA. We used MFA sweep though, which is a PowerShell script for all those that don't know. But yeah, there was no luck. Um, So there's another thing we must have in mind, and it's the SIT rep, which are situational reports, which should be provided to the red team leader when encountered with unplanned issues. Now, this is not an excuse like to saturate or to fail the communication channel like every minute. Hey, I'm here. Now I'm having trouble. I'm nervous. Help me, red team leader. No, this is just like an opportunity to have this communication with the red team leader every 10 or 15 minutes to let him know how it's going so that if the client asks, he's got a little bit of context of what's going on in there. And there's the mission standing, right? So sometimes you must know things don't go as planned, so the red team leader may order one of three things basically. So we can either resume operational orders, that is to grant additional time. So let's see, we've already been 5 straight hours inside the building, but we haven't accomplished the objectives, right? That is, for example, reach the server's room. So the red team leader may ask, "Hey, how's it going? Why haven't you reached the server's room?" So the operator might say, "Yeah, the building is pretty big. Really sorry, we're pretty close though. Can you give us some time?" Okay, so let's resume up order, right? Now the other option would be to concede, um, which could be just give up and show the authorization letters. And this is actually fun because I had an experience where I was I was caught off guard basically, and the employees from that client like started asking me all kind of questions. Who were you? Who sent you up here? We do not believe you. You do not belong here. I was like fucked, literally. And I texted my RTL and said, "Hey, should I give up already or what?" And he said, "Yeah, stop. Let's stop losing time, right?" And so I thought, and I said, "Okay, what about if okay, this is game over, but what about if I try at least to get out of the building?" So I didn't give up, actually. And I actually said the guy that I was a compulsive smoker and I was really stressed about all the situations because I was a legitimate employee. And you guys were treating me like a bad guy, like if I was a, a, a robber or a thief, and I was super stressed and I needed to smoke a cigarette right now or I would pass out, right? So the person empathized with me and said, "You know what? Yes, I'm a compulsive smoker too. Uh, you just go and go back when you're ready." And so I took my fellow operator and get out of the building right away. 1 hour later, uh, the police came, but we were not there. So that was a definitely something to report to the client. There was okay with it. That is definitely better than just telling, "Okay, you know what, we couldn't, well, we couldn't infiltrate your facilities," right? Now, this is not to give blame to the RTL. Remember, the RTL won't have as much context as you guys do. You, they won't have, sorry, he won't have as much context as you guys do. So it's not his fault. It's just that we all have like word um, in these kind of decisions. They're just they sorry, they're just there to support you. All right. So the third one is to abort. So pretty much okay. You guys have been 5 hours inside. Why haven't you accomplished the goals? And they can say the operators can say, for example, "Yeah, you know what? There's just a lot of security guys here. It's not possible, at least not today. So let's abort them and go back like the next week," right? So those are valid options that can occur in the middle of the mission. So now the 11th phase is to evacuate, to evade, and to cover. Um, so let's break these down. The evacuate term can be thought as more of an orderly exit, considering the building layout and rally point. At this point, we should already know, technically by heart, the whole building layout. We shouldn't be as lost as when we were like the first time. So that's why I put this meme, "Run, bitch, run." We should not run, bitch. We should not run. Because most of the time, clients won't consider a red team operation successful until the operators have successfully um, reached the rally point. That is, it's like if, for example, a threat actor hacked into a big corporation um, network, let's say Uber, right? If the SOC team if the SOC team caught the bad guys in the middle of their intent to exfiltrate information, they would take that as a win because the threat actor didn't manage to do it after all. However, imagine if the threat actor actually managed to exfiltrate information and exposed everything to the internet or breach forums and stuff. That would be much more critical. So that's why we need to take this step seriously. It is as much as important as everything else we have done to this point. And and yes, that's it. So the evade thing is basically focusing on evading security controls that were identified during the recon phase. And the infiltrations itself, here's Uda to the rescue again. Remember, we must always be observing, orienting, deciding, and acting based on those facts we find out. So, cover means to hide or destroy evidence of the team's actions and presence, and be aware that anything slightly out of place will raise an alarm. For example, if you sit down on a desk, right, and the next desk right beside you, there's a bottle of water, right? Imagine if you move that like, I don't know, 1 or 2 feet. The person from that desk comes back. You're not there, but that will definitely raise an alarm, right? And for example, and this is an error that happened to myself in the first engagement I was in, I I took a look at the desk right beside me, and I saw there was a jacket hanging in a chair, so I knew someone was supposed to be there and could come back at any minute. And I don't know why I decided to open the drawer, and I saw a lot of candies, like 10, and I really took one and ate it right there. So imagine if the person came back, opened up like her drawer, and noticed that there was one left. So that would definitely provoke something on them, like, hey, who was here, right? So that was an error from my part, and you shouldn't be doing that. Okay. So important questions. Where is the team going to exit? Again, we must know the building layout. We must know where the exits are at. What or who should they avoid on the way out? Pretty much we should know where the cameras are located, where are, for example, movement sensors or temperature sensors, or where the security team is stronger. Maybe in a door there are 3 guys, while in other there is just 1 guy, right? So that should be better for us to exfiltrate. And how should they cover their tracks so no one suspects anything after they leave? Sorry, I was breathing. Um, So again, if you see uh, there are 10 candies in a drawer, don't touch it. Don't touch it. Just that's an important part, and at covering your tracks, right? Don't touch it. So the collect and exfiltrate phase, which is the last one, it's pretty much a proper exit from a successful red team operation, uh, which happens in 2 stages. Um, Collection. Uh, Basically, we properly collect evidence and equipment to rally with fellow operators. Imagine you got yourself a laptop, which was not properly secured, or a hard drive, or a handful of documents, and you are on the first floor. You're actually crossing the street, and you remember you didn't pack, I don't know, your lock picking tools or a Wi-Fi antenna. No, you would go back up inside the building, and that would be pretty weird for yourself and for your team. That should screw it up, right? Now, exfiltration means successfully withdrawing the flag from the target. Now, the flag, again, is whatever you can take just to prove the client you were actually inside and you could um, evade the security controls in order to exfiltrate it. So here's a picture of me and my red team leader with a laptop. We managed to exfiltrate from a bank here from Colombia, which was my first experience actually, and holding the fake ID badges we printed out. So since this is the last step, I'm gonna stop a little and tell you about how the experience was. So in order to get those fake IDs, I was honestly super boring, super bored. It was a Sunday, and I started looking at Twitter at the profile of this bank, and I saw these guys had like this marketing strategy where they post with a lot of employees and their IDs were just displayed. So I did a AI Zoom or something like that. I don't know how many X's it was that Zoom, and I managed to get the design out of it. So I printed out and I just used it. It was, I mean, I compared it to one of the actual employees, and it was 99% the same. So there was no fault that. Um, so let's say I was at the fourth floor. I was at the fourth floor, and I saw the opportunity to take one of these laptops. There was no employees around, and I took it. I put it inside my bag, and I just went out. Now I took the elevator and I told my red team leader, "Hey, I got the laptop. We're good. I'm going out. I'm exfiltrating." This guy said, "Okay, you got the charger?" And I said, "No. What for? I mean, we got the flag, right?" "Yeah, but we may need to do some things. I don't know. We may need to charge the laptop." Okay, so I went back in, and first of all, I just filled myself a cup of coffee, just to give me my character a little bit more of confidence. Like, what thief would walk around a bank with a cup of coffee in his hands, right? So I did that, um, and I peek through the door and I see three ladies like looking around and to themselves, just like Travolta on Pulp Fiction. I couldn't find the meme. I know you guys know which one is, and they were like super well, they were looking around like what where the hell went this guy? Uh, so I walked up to them. I had no option, and they said, um, hey, I'm sorry. Do you take this laptop?" And I was like shaking, honestly, and his head like dead in the eye, looking at them dead in the eye. "Yes, I was. Why?" "Oh, because I'm with my boss here on the phone, and he says you can't do that. He has not reported it to anything." "Yes, I took it because of maintenance, something like that. I don't know. Um, could you talk to my boss?" Okay, so I took the phone and I started speaking to him, and this guy sounded like super rude, like, "Hey, what the hell? What the hell are you doing? Why'd you take my laptop? You cannot do it. Put it away. Put it back right now." So I noticed. I'm reading the comments. I'm sorry. Um, so I noticed this guy was not a regular employee. It was someone with a lot of power to demote me if I were an actual employee. So I said, "You know what, sir? This was just orders from my boss. So let me give you his name, her name, and you just call her. All right? I'm really sorry for the situation." "Okay, you know what? Okay, I call her. I gave back the phone to the ladies, and I literally just started walking as fast as I could. I reached the emergency stairs and I started running. I knew for a fact that there was no cameras in the stairs, so I was safe there basically. But I said to myself, okay, this is not safe for me. Um, Someone could notice me like running, so that wouldn't be safe. So I took the elevator, hoping to get to the first floor. That actually took me to the like 11th or 15th floor. So I was like, oh my God, this cannot be happening right now. So it reached the 15th floor or something like that, and it went back down to the first floor. So when I got there, I needed to leave a sign in a book because I registered a laptop of mine when I first entered. And while I was doing that, like the three girls got out of the elevator, pointing out of at me, saying like, "Hey, where are you going? You cannot take the laptop." what the hell? Something like that. They were actually accusing me, and I was surrounded by security guards. I was like so fucked. I told my red team leader we was in a WhatsApp call or something. I I I whispered, they caught me. I'm done. Um, and I like entered again in my character of somebody like super confident, really. And I told him, um, hey, you know what? I actually don't have it here. I left it in the third floor, for maintenance. No, you couldn't do it. You know what? Let me call my boss. So I took out my phone, put it in my ear, and started straight faking it a call. Like, yeah, okay, mm-hmm, yeah. I wasn't talking to anybody, right? Yeah, okay, yes. Carlos for Charles, Spanish. Carlos, yeah, third floor. Okay, good. Okay, bye bye. So I uh, hang up the call and I told him, okay, you know what? I talked to my boss. She said it's fine if you guys gonna wanna take it. Just go to the third floor, speak to Carlos, and well, you will have to leave a sign, but yes, it's all yours. All right, no problem. And I mean, they just ate it up, like the whole story. And the guard standing right beside me, like, kind of laughed and told me Uh, I did not understand what happened. And I just laughed and I said, yeah, you know what, my boss, it's just my boss that it's so cranky sometimes. And she asked me to pick up a laptop for maintenance, and then the guy got upset about it. So never mind, never mind. And it was a funny story. We just laughed and they just let me get out of there like a champ, like a little champ. So that was the story how I managed um, to exfiltrate an actual laptop and a lot of documents actually with important information. Like 30 minutes or something like that. After that, they called the police and stuff, and I just had to go back and return everything. So the last thing I wanna um, talk to you about is the team debrief. Um, Basically, we should hold a meeting at the earliest convenience after doing all this because everything details start to become fuzzy after that. So taking notes is an important process. It's obvious that after a successful red team operations, we all want to celebrate and start sharing experiences. And oh my God, I was so nervous at that time. I almost got caught. Yeah, okay. I mean, it's okay to celebrate, but it's important as well to take a moment to take notes about everything that happened in order to put it in the report as exact as it happened. So, um, that is all for my part. I'm sorry if I made some English mistakes. I can get a little nervous sometimes. So, if you have any questions, again, I'm not an expert, but I'd be happy to help if I can, or the moderators are as well useful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, man. I'm gonna be the first to say great job on this presentation. I think you did an excellent job of just like outlining, well, one, bringing awareness to physical red teaming, but actually outlining your methodology. It's not something you could really go and pick up easily, especially on the internet, because there's so little resources. But I think you did a wonderful job of just being so detailed and correlating physical red team tactics to actual like network red teaming tactics. So great job once again. If you can, I would personally like these slides just so I can have it for my own reference in the event I run my own physical red team.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll be uploading it soon to the chat.
Awesome.
Yeah, Madsec, just want to say, dude, awesome job, great presentation, fantastic job. I mean, 10 out of 10, really, really top of the line, good stuff, dude.
Thank you so much, buddy.
And dude, yes, always go for the coffee maker. I mean, technically not outside of ROE, right? I mean, it's there if everybody's making a cup of coffee, and that's what the situation calls for. Just make a cup of coffee.
Yeah, totally. That's a cheat code, as you say.
Uh, right. No, one thing that that I chatted Premiere on the side about that was really cool about what you had mentioned, right? So I've done a few physicals, just standard. You know, when we think of pen testing and red teaming, right, there is a line between them a little bit. And so I've done just a couple just standard physical tests where I just try to get into a building, you know, take pictures of documents on printers and whatnot. But it was really cool that you went in, right, took pictures of documents and stuff on printers, yada yada, but then were able to go back outside and use that information, right, to prove access, like in the screenshot where you showed Trevor spray, or, you know, whatever spraying tool you use. The fact that, I mean, obviously that's kind of the insinuation there when I take pictures of, you know, usernames or sheets with that information. I put it in my report and I say, well, you know, with this information, technically I could have, you know, attacked certain services, but the fact that you actually did and then actually, you know, got a valid hit, it was just really cool to see the connecting of those dots. Because in my experience, you know, when I walk out of the building, I don't do anything else. I just write the report and that's it. But the fact that you were able to do that and then, you know, actually use that information further was really really cool. So good stuff.
I mean, the funny thing is that I took that photo and while I was inside, I didn't notice there was a password like in a post-it. It was just
Oh, no way.
just until I was
Yeah,
home, like the morning after that I noticed, and I said like, oh my God,
yeah.
look at that.
So do you, when you're doing these red team gigs, do you ever coordinate with like a network pen testing team to actually facilitate like a network red team? Like I know, you know, physical testing, physical red teaming, you kind of are testing the physical controls so you can see if you can get in, see if anybody questions you, right? Try and find information on printers. But are you ever going in with the goal of plugging in a device, like some sort of device hidden somewhere, so that a team elsewhere can connect to it and then continue testing? Have you ever done something like that?
Yes, actually, we had this idea where we had a Raspberry Pi with a Kali Linux, and we had a
Hmm.
I don't know if you guys know this 3G modem, which is like a USB. So we connected to it. Um, and we automated the process of with a power bank, when the power bank connected to the Raspberry Pi,
Hmm.
it would
Yeah.
just log in straight to Kali Linux without having to put the user and password, and just connect to the internet. And with any desk or team viewer, I don't remember which one, we managed to connect remotely,
Awesome. That's
Um,
cool. Yeah. Yeah.
and with that,
There.
we didn't
Go
manage
ahead.
actually, but we wanted to, like, with a network cable, connect the Raspberry Pi to some socket or something like that. We couldn't because of the
Nice.
time constraints, but we tried that. Yeah.
Right, right. No, but that specific scenario right there, again, going back to the idea of just connecting the dots between, or I guess pushing the envelope past what a standard pen test would be into more of a red team, you know, and putting a remote device actually on a network physically and leaving, and then having other people, you know, in a hotel room or across the street,
Hmm.
whatnot, connecting to it is crazy. I went to a talk at a local B-Sides conference where I believe a red team manager from Deloitte was talking about red team implants, like physical devices that he was creating, much like you said, you know, Raspberry Pi. And he had a great presentation on how he custom built basically like a little, basically an Intel NUC or basically a Raspberry Pi, and he custom built it with a little case so it looked like a NUC, but inside it had, you know, wireless networking capability, power bank connectivity. It even had a little screen on it, so whoever was plugging in the device on site could actually use this tiny little touch screen with basic inputs and confirm network connectivity there on the spot. Like, you know, if they made it into a
Oh,
server room and before the other testers, the other operators needed to connect, they were in there with this little device, plugged it in, used the screen to, you know, connect to the network, configure whatever they need to configure, and then leave. But yeah, again, that sort of experience, connecting those lines, connecting those dots, is super awesome, super crucial. And
Hmm.
you know, if you ever do another talk, that's something you should talk about, your, you know, the implants that you use for sure.
will do if that's the case anytime. Thank you.
I appreciate the fictitious scenario too, like, you know, how you explain rally point, deployment point, staging site. And first thing I started thinking about as you explain those is like one of my favorite movies is called Den of Thieves. And it's pretty much just, you know, a sophisticated, you know, it's a bunch of sophisticated bank robbers essentially. And they go through, you don't realize it as you're watching the movie, of course, but they go through each and every one of these phases. You know, they rally up and then of course, you know, they deploy. And I think it was just like such an interesting correlation.
Good, good. I mean, yeah, that was the objective. Sometimes to like in order, I mean, the book is great on that as well because it will show you like a lot of references and real life examples about every concept, especially when it comes to equipment, because it will name a lot of radios and types of backpacks and stuff. So that is really great. The book, by the way, well, it's called Physical Red Team Operations. It's pretty
Mm.
much that. Jeremiah Talamantes, if you wanna read it, I highly recommend it. I don't think this talk like replaces it at all. It's just incentivates it. You know, you should definitely go for it if you can. It's on Amazon, by the way.
Gotcha. Somebody also had a question, Quality G in the chat there. I don't know if you have some time to take a look and maybe answer that one.
Right. That's a great question. Um, I think this happens not only on physical red teaming, but in general red teaming, right? So, for example, you in a red team operation, let's say in the digital phase, you must be doing uh, uh, re- uh, reunions or meetings, which are called dailies, right? So, pretty much every day for 15 minutes, you reunite with the client to let them know where you are and what you're doing. So, for example, you find a I don't know, some kind of vulnerability in a server, technically you should share it with the client. And yes, the client should take advantage of that. And actually, for some phishing campaigns that we have done, kind of like that has happened. Like every phishing campaign we've done have had at least one hit. But with that specific client, not even one person looked at Evil Jinx. And you know, if you have used Evil Jinx, you know that you can see the exact IP that visits your phishing link, right? So that is a risk you must take. I mean, the client should always uh, know what you're doing, or I mean, you can try to hide it, but if at the end it doesn't work as planned, there will be a problem you don't want to have, I think. I don't know, Gonski, if you want to say it over mic.
Um, Yeah, all I was gonna say is when it because I've had similar situations in my experience where, especially on the physicals, where you need to build a certain amount of trust, and the client needs to understand what they're actually getting out of this. As Savage said in the chat, yeah, it's kind of a non-issue. It's kind of the whole point of the operation, but what it comes down to is if a client's spending $80,000 or whatever they're spending for and your team to come in and kind of demonstrate these risks and identify these vulnerabilities, and they, and let's just say the client in their own meetings, like they ask for your prep and your specific plans, and then in their own end they, prep the security guards. Hey, just letting you know, we got some guys coming in on Thursday between this time. Be a little bit more strict with who you're asking. Make sure you're actually doubling down on who you're verifying. Now, to Savage's point, yeah, that's eventually the end goal of what we're trying to teach them and demonstrate to them. But if they do that in prep for your engagement and then they just kill your engagement, and I'm using an extreme example here, then it's really, uh, what's it worth to them? If they just make an ad hoc change on that day and they just call the security team up front, like, hey, just be ready or make sure you're extra tight on your verification, but they're not following through with it afterward, right? And they're not actually initiating some sort of change management or actually giving someone on their team and leadership the responsibility to ensure that those practices are being met consistently, and they're just doing it for that day for the sake of the engagement, for a clean report, or because they don't want to deal with a lot of remediation. At that point, that's not my issue because I'm not the one paying for it, so whatever. But at the end of the day, as a consultant, when you're doing these sorts of things, it's about the value that you're bringing to the client. A lot of money is being spent. Obviously, we like to do these things and it's exciting and whatnot. So if they undermine the sort of if they undermine the engagement is what I'm saying. Yeah, Savage, like you said, if they want to waste 80K, I'm not in a position, nor and I really care. But again, if you want to be holistic and all I guess organic about it, whatever, then it's kind of like, yeah, you need to build a certain amount of trust with the client. You need to explain to them that, hey, make sure these people maybe aren't aware, make sure everything is set as it would be on a normal day. We don't want any changes to the environment, whether physical or digital, prior to the engagement, because it can undermine the overall value. Again, that's not really my problem if they do it. That's not our problem. They spend the money and that's what they decide to do. That's what they decide to do. But it's good to try and build a certain amount of trust between, just so they understand, because a lot of times they won't understand. They'll be like, well, I just want a clean report for the compliance auditor. I want a clean report for the QSA and this and that, and that's fine. But that can potentially lead to bigger issues for them. Again, not my problem, but it's just something that does come up from time to time. Anyway, that's all I have. Yeah, if anybody's got any other questions, feel free to ask away. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. I'm learning a lot too.
Any other questions? Oh, people in the comment section. Sounds like you really need to profile your target during that recon phase to understand what they expect.
Yeah, Quality G, that's a good point. And Madsec, you can jump in on this as well. And that all comes down to the scoping calls and the expectations, and again, what they're looking to get out of it, and what they want in scope and out of scope, um, and stuff like that. It's important for the overall engagement.
Hmm. Like most clients in my experience, I realized they all live by a different definition of what they think a penetration test is and or a red
Hmm.
team engagement. And so naturally, to Gonski's point, you have to be able to outline some of the objectives of a standard pen test, right? Like here's what we're actually looking to assess, whether it's your defense mechanisms, your policies, passwords, etc. Those would be the things that we're looking to assess. Now, if they are made aware of those specific things, during the scoping call and they decide to change it, fine. But it doesn't necessarily mean that, that attack path will now be prevented, at least in my
Hmm.
experience. But there have been plenty of times where I've run Bloodhound during an engagement and, I see that all of the, more sophisticated or highly privileged accounts that I need access to have had their passwords changed within the last 24 hours. Like now that's while it's annoying, it's kind of just like, okay, like, well, I can take an educated guess as to how mature this environment is. You know what I'm saying? And there's likely always another way to achieve that same goal.
Right. And going back to the need to profile the target and understand and deal with the client expectations, but you as the tester or the operator, you also need to understand what you're stepping into. Because if you don't ask them any good profiling questions, or don't do a good job in the recon phase, and you find that this business has armed guards or third party security or whatever it is, and now you've found yourself in a pickle where you're like, oh, like they didn't really tell us this and we didn't really
Yep.
ask about it. And now here we are on day one of the engagement. And now there's
Hmm.
armed guards, which
Yep.
poses a physical risk to the testers and whatnot. Uh, so yeah, expectations are super important, whether it's a standard pen test, whether it's a red team, MadSec, anything else to add on that?
Not really. Maybe moving on to the other question about the total number of operators. I think it's just optimal to have two operators and one red team leader at a minimum. However, that first experience I told you about, I did it solo practically. So it is technically possible, to do it alone, but it's always
Yeah, it
important to have
is.
support. Yeah.
I wish that in all the things that I've done, albeit not as lot. It sounds like you have a lot more experience in this than I do, but in my situations, it's basically been solo and it's just been me. Again, it's not a red teaming. They weren't red team engagements, so it's not. There really wasn't that much of a need to have somebody on the outside managing the overall thing. But I agree with you. If you have two people, not only are your chances of a successful, we'll just say successful outcome or successful breach kind of, I guess, doubled in a sense, but it's nice, mentally, right? You have somebody there with you, somebody there to help, somebody there in case something goes wrong. Um, I definitely wish I had more than myself on some of these. Quality G, I'll just touch on that real quick. I'll touch on just the standard physical portion of that. Yeah, sometimes the goal is just to get in however you can because the client just want to see what's possible. Other times the goal is, hey, we have this like shipping warehouse garage attached to the building, and we've told the guys to close the doors all the time, but they leave it open because it gets a little hot in the warehouse. Like, can you go through that specific door, right? Because and the reason why I've specifically been asked questions like that is because this report is being used as proverbial ammunition for the top leadership to reallocate funds or reallocate an initiative or reallocate people and start an initiative to fix some of those issues. So typically our point, in that one situation, my point of contact specifically asked, can you get into this room? Can you go through this door? Can you take pictures of these couple doors for those exact situations? Like I explained, the warehouse folks just leave the doors open because it's easy, it's convenient. They're moving boxes. They don't want to have to swipe their card every time. It gets too hot in there. They put a fan in. And those pictures and that specific evidence is very, very helpful for that point of contact to then go to his boss or his leadership and say, look, I've been telling you guys about this for months now. Look at what this random person did. They walked in right through that door. I've been telling these guys for months to not, to keep that door closed or to do this and that. So just for the standard physicals, sometimes it depends. Again, that comes back to the expectation. Do they just want to see how you can get in at all? Or do they need to see a specific entry point for some purpose of their own? Yeah, basically whatever the objective is the objective, right? That's but yeah.
I have a question here, right? And I'm not trying to be that guy. And if you don't want to answer it, it's no problem. But how important do you think culture or skin color comes into play when conducting a physical pen test? For example, like you're in Colombia, right? If I'm not mistaken, Matzek.
Correct.
Right. So if you had, let's say, an African American, right, walk into that same building that you conducted that engagement in, like, what's the likelihood of them achieving the same success rate that you did?
Yo, yeah, that's a great question. I think racism is not as visible here as it may be in America. I mean, in the U.S. Um, it depends on the looks as well, uh, because even if you're black, African American, or Asian, whatever it is, but if you're well dressed, like in an office environment, I think the outcome would be the same. All right.
Mhm.
However, if you're black or Asian or whatever, really, but you're not well dressed up, then yeah, they might just like dismiss you or not let you get past the door even.
Right.
But
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great answer, right? Like I asked out of just ignorance, right? I know we all know Al Hazred, at least if you're in info spec or offensive security space, you know of Al Hazred. He's a physical pen tester or has conducted physical pen tests before, and he received that question on I think a Twitch live stream, and he's like, yeah, like he's conducted physicals in banks, and he said for sure if he was an African American, they likely would not have let him in like the bank, in the way that he was able to get in. And I thought it was just like an interesting concept because you don't usually hear about physical like African American physical pen testers, at least the ones that I know. So not that it's a racist thing, but like Sav said, just perception.
Sure, and more than the race itself, I think it's the like the cultural expressions one might have. For example, and I only say this for the movies because I haven't been there, but obviously not all black people talk in the same manner. For example, you're black, right? If I'm not wrong,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
You have uh, for my understanding, you have a highly academical speech, right? Uh, However, other black dudes will speak more like in a neighborhood manner, right? So the same thing happens here. If you come into an office talking like in the neighborhood, it doesn't matter if you're black, white, Asian, or whatever it is. Um, you just won't get past the door. So I, I
right,
think it's
right.
more about that.
Yeah, the ebonics. I got to kick it to the curb when I'm doing a physical pen test. Yeah,
Yeah.
feel you though. So no, it's a great point though. It's a really great point. I would love to do a physical. Um, I want to be the drone flying guy though. But any other questions from anyone in the audience about pen testing in general or red teaming or physicals? Great talk once again, Matsick. I appreciate this. And for anyone in the audience, if you weren't at the last talk, I did mention it. If any one of you have any research, projects or talks in general that you're looking to present, feel free to just send me a DM. We'd love to get you on the schedule. That's one of the focus points, from a server perspective this year. We'd like to scale, pretty much and allow like most of our members to talk in the event they're prepared, of course. I think that's pretty much it though. Two presentation, 1 month. Jeez. Yeah, right. Try to get two a month. I think I might be up next, so take it easy on me, y'all. Or Gonski will.
All right, so I just wanted to thank you guys again for this space. Um, Again, I learned a lot. I'm obviously still practicing my English, so I was super nervous. So it helps me build that confidence to start speaking English in a good way. So thank you everyone for attending, for paying attention, and of course Zero XP for the opportunity.
No
And
problem, man.
Gonski for
Looking
the
forward to the
support.
talk. Hopefully
Sorry?
you come to the States and do the talk.
Right, right. Thank you again.
Yeah, man, no problem. Everyone have a good night.